Good evening, and welcome to this edition of Labor Vision. I'm Bob DELANEY, Executive Director of the Institute for Labor Studies and Research. Labor Vision, a production of the Institute, focuses on topics of importance and interest to working Rhode Islanders. We hope you enjoy this evening's edition. Welcome to this edition of Labor Vision. This evening's topic is teacher evaluation. The Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals is changing the way that teachers in Rhode Island are evaluated, or at least they're participating in a new procedure and process on how it's done. The Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals has been working with 6 districts, including both the union and administration in those districts, to design and pilot a new method, a new design in teacher evaluation. Before we begin this evening's program, let's take a look at a video that the Federation of Teachers has designed to give information on the system itself. The Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals is leading a groundbreaking effort to revamp teacher evaluation in partnership with 6 of its urban affiliates and their administrative colleagues.
With funding from the AFT's Innovation Grant, the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals brought together teacher union and administrative representatives from 6 of our urban locals: Central Falls, Cranston, Pawtucket, Providence, West Warwick, and Woonsocket. Those districts engaged in a partnership with the RAFT and committed themselves to a long, hard effort to examine their current evaluation systems, look at what was being required by the Department of Education, work with national experts, and draft a system that would really meet the needs of all educators in the districts, give them high-quality feedback on their practice, and support them as they move forward to do a better job every single day.
The Rhode Island Federation of Teachers feels it's vitally important for us to be in the forefront of educator evaluation because so much is at stake for our membership.
This effort, funded by the AFT's Innovation Fund and an I-3 grant from the U.S. Department of Education, recognizes the need to develop a high-quality teacher evaluation and support system focused on strengthening teacher practice and student achievement.
Most people think that teacher unions protect incompetent teachers are the reason why teacher effectiveness isn't dealt with. We actually thought that that should be just the opposite. Our members tell us that they want the union to take an active role in supporting them professionally, and that's what we decided to do.
Teachers are very open to being evaluated. They want to be evaluated, but they want to be evaluated in a system that they feel is fair, that provides opportunities for them to grow as professionals, and so they can see concrete feedback that will allow them to do that.
The union's leadership ensured teacher voice in critical decisions about an evaluation system focused on professional growth and designed to provide members with valuable feedback about their practice, supports to improve instruction, and opportunities to demonstrate effectiveness in a variety of ways.
We have a history here at the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers of leading professional issues. We've been involved in a mentoring network. We do significant professional development with our members, and leading the work on educator evaluation was a likely next step.
It's vitally important for us to be in the forefront of this because it is our profession.
Well, I think it's extremely important for the union to be involved in this so that we are all on the same page.
Being a central administrator, I've been very encouraged to see members of the union, our Woonsocket Teachers Guild, and our principals and our teachers working together to put this model together.
We feel it's very important to establish that type of collaboration with the administration because there won't be the successful buy-in from either of the parties unless they feel that they've had a legitimate role.
The Rhode Island Innovation Consortium decided from the very beginning that the model it was developing would be focused on professional growth and based on multiple measures of educator effectiveness.
We've seen over the course of the year that superintendents and union presidents have rolled up their sleeves and gotten involved with our experts and with folks from the Department of Education, people from our office at the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals, colleagues from the AFT, and others to design the system that will best meet the needs of our teachers, administrators, and students.
I've learned a lot about my own teaching practices.
So at the start, the anxiety was there, but now they feel very comfortable. They welcome the observations. They really welcome the pre and post conversation, which I think is the most valuable piece.
We also are learning as our children are learning, and this is a great way to see the areas that we do well, see the areas that we can improve upon to make education for all the children that much better.
We've learned a lot from the pilot that we've engaged in over the last 3 months. This is a rigorous system. It's not a drive-by, and it's not a gotcha.
The RIFTHP's leadership on evaluation is gaining recognition at the state and national level, but most importantly, is positioning its locals for successful implementation of a high-quality teacher evaluation and support system that will make a difference for teachers, administrators, and students.
One of the American Federation of Teacher mottos is that we are a union of professionals, and our members look to us to bring their professional interests to the forefront. And in education right now, there couldn't be more important work as a union that we would be doing than working on a comprehensive, fair, and equitable evaluation system.
I feel that any teacher would benefit from going through this process.
Teaching and leading in today's schools are complex activities.
I couldn't be more proud of the direction that our union is going.
This is something good, something I believe in.
We're ready to go.
The video is fairly impressive when we take a look at all of the work that's gone into redesigning a system on teacher evaluation. This evening's guests are Frank Flynn, he's the president of the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals, and Colleen Callahan, the director of professional issues for the Federation of Teachers. Welcome to you both, and thank you for attending this evening's show.
Well, thank you for inviting us.
The issue of teacher evaluation is something that's been on the burner for a long time. There's been a lot of discussion over the years, and it's interesting to see in this particular model that we have actually a situation now where members of the union, administration in a district, and teachers have collaboratively come together to design a brand new method, a way of teachers being evaluated. Are all teachers and all administrators in the state going to have to fall under some new system or follow new procedures?
Yes, last year the Rhode Island Board of Regents adopted a set of educator evaluation system standards, and those standards require all school districts in Rhode Island to adopt a Rhode Island Department of Education approved evaluation system beginning this September 2011.
Frank, in terms of the system that the Federation of Teachers has been designed, what makes it a little bit different? Because my understanding is it just recently was approved by the Department of Education.
It was recently approved, and it's a tremendous credit to Colleen, who was spearheaded this effort on our behalf, as well as all of the people that were involved in designing and implementing this. It's been a massive undertaking over the past 2 years. But the difference between I believe, between ours and the other two models that are out there are three models actually that are being implemented this fall. One is the Rhode Island Department of Education model. The one Coventry School District, which is also an AFT district, has developed and they are implementing their own model. And then there's what we call the innovation model, which is the collaborative between the 6 districts that we represent. It's Central Falls, Cranston, Providence, Pawtucket, West Warwick, and Woonsocket. And the collaboration with both the administration and the teachers union were fundamental, and it was actually one of the bases. You could not participate without a high level of collaboration and cooperation, and you had to sign off that you were willing to do that so that we could move forward. And right from the beginning, the people have worked very closely together, and it's brought people together to work on something that's of vital importance to all of us. And we're very proud of the work and the avenues that it's opened up, not only the benefits with this evaluation, but also the ability for districts to work closely together on other initiatives that have spun off from this. And it's truly remarkable work that's been done, and I think we're looking forward to the next phase.
It's interesting to use the word remarkable, because my understanding is it truly is a remarkable effort, because when we take a look at the times that administration and unions come together, it generally tends to be less of more of a contentious issue in terms of negotiations and bargaining, whereas what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing this time is a completely different situation, where we have both administration and teachers running in the same direction to design an evaluation model that's going to improve instruction in the classroom and consequently improve the quality of education for students. How much of a stretch was it to literally get administrators and teachers and union members, knowing that teachers are members of the union, but that from a professional point of view on education and teaching, the union point of view on education and teaching, and from the point of view of administrators at various levels? Because it sounds to me like both the superintendents, principals, and even assistant principals were involved in the process.
It actually was an interesting collaboration, because quite frankly, the union leaders and the superintendents, or the administrative leaders, had the same interest at heart. And I think when you ask how come people came together, they came together because, number one, there was agreement, there was consensus around the fact that the quality of the educator, both the educational leader, the principal, the assistant principal, and the teacher in the classroom, have an enormous impact on the ability of students to achieve. And I think there was an understanding among these 6 districts that if they were really going to do something that would be successful in terms of implementation, they needed the buy-in, they needed the understanding, they needed to work together on what the evaluation model would be like. And I think the other agreement was that even in this time of the blame the, fill in the blank, the teacher, the principal, the whomever, that this was important enough that they came together to say, we want a system that first and foremost is going to provide high quality feedback, is going to give information to principals, to teachers about what they're doing well, what they could do to improve, and how together they can use evaluation, not just to sort the good from the bad, but to really recognize effective practice and to help move all teachers and principals toward highly effective practice.
It's interesting when you talk about that, because I know, having been a classroom teacher for more than 20 years, oftentimes an administrator would come in with a checkoff list. And if you were wearing a tie that day and the students were sitting in their seats, that was the beginning of a good evaluation. Where what I'm hearing and seeing now is something completely different, that you really are evaluating the kind of work that's done in the classroom in terms of contact with individual students, the kind of performance and student work. A whole pile of pieces. Tell me about these pieces that make up the evaluation system in the classroom.
We say that this is a multiple measures system, and so what that means is that we recognize that teaching and leading are complex endeavors in today's classrooms and today's schools. And so when you think about, and you were a teacher, so you think about the way in which you were evaluated in the past, it was often a hit or miss kind of activity. And in fact, administrators say that they were never really well trained to do the job. This system begins with an agreement between the evaluator, usually a principal, but sometimes it would be a peer evaluator, another colleague. But in general, it's the principal. A conversation between the principal and the person who's going to be evaluated around their goals. What are the school goals? What are the student learning goals? What are the professional practice goals of the individual? And they set up a plan, if you will, for the year about what the evidence is needed to prove that those goals have been met. And so they work out a plan that involves observation of practice, and we're pretty familiar with that, the classroom observation. But the model that we've put together is definitely standards-based. It's not just that you come into a classroom and say, I think you're doing a great job today. It's really an observation against those standards, those elements of good practice that we know make a difference in terms of educating students well. And so there is the observation of practice. There's a collection of additional evidence that is, the artifacts on how you communicate with parents, evidence of the planning that goes into your lessons, examples of student work, those kinds of things that show evidence both of what you do every day, how far you're progressing in terms of your learning as an educator, and how your students are doing. And then, as many states are, we're also incorporating evidence of student learning, which will be the evidence that shows us how students have progressed based on where they started the year and where they ended. Some of that evidence will come from statewide assessment, but we're really happy, and I think we've made significant progress in this state in pushing the dialogue in Rhode Island to include evidence of classroom practice and classroom progress, stuff that's meaningful to teachers, to parents, and to kids.
My understanding in looking at what you've done and understanding how evaluation takes place in the classroom is that there are many states in the United States that determine teacher performance based upon student performance on a statewide test. My interpretation of that would be almost like a one-hit wonder. It depends on how the students perform on that day. Everything from, you know, do they come to school prepared with a breakfast and all of those pieces. Tell me about how you've broadened this evaluation system so that it wasn't a matter of one test for students at one time to determine how a teacher is evaluated over an entire year of work.
Well, I think just to put it in context, prior to this year, there are over 40 public educational entities in the state, including all of the districts and the different state schools and so forth. And there were that many evaluation systems in place. So what this has done, at least at the very least, has brought some consistency. It began with the educator evaluation system standards that were promulgated by the Board of Regents several years, 2 years ago. To get to your specific question, though, what we've done now is we recognize that student achievement has to be part of any evaluation system, but it shouldn't be weighted in that a single data point could determine someone's career path or continuance within the career or their certification. So it's an important part. What we've done with this evaluation system is we've looked at that as an integral piece as well as all of the other components. I think one of the difficult components of developing a fair evaluation system is that there are specific data points for some of the content areas, like reading and math, that are tested on tests such as the NECAP. But there are many subjects out there. Some estimate it's at least 75% of the information that's taught in schools on a daily basis aren't tested specifically on those standardized tests that could give you that kind of information. And that is one of the biggest complexities of this whole system. I don't know, Colleen.
Yeah, one of the things that we tried to do, and we did do throughout the whole development process, was to make sure that we were very well aligned with the requirements of the Department of Education. So we've talked about the educator evaluation system standards. Those are the standards that the Department of Education put in place to ensure the consistency that Frank is talking about. There are also professional teaching standards, which really take a look at, as we said before, the complexity of teaching. What are all of those things about planning and classroom management and instruction that we know are important to successful teaching? We also know that the Department of Education was requiring the inclusion of the student learning piece. And we think that the work that we did together with the Department of Education on trying to figure out how that might work has benefited the system, not just for the 6 districts, but for the state as a whole, I think. We did start out with a calculation that we kept calling it the 51%, because at the very beginning of this journey, a couple of years ago, the Department of Education was using a formula that would say that 51%, or a significant portion, the most significant portion of an educator's evaluation, had to be based on student learning. That led us to the kinds of problems that Frank was talking about in terms of, so how does that work for an English teacher or an art teacher or a social studies teacher? What does it mean for teachers who aren't teaching either the subjects or the grades where these statewide assessments apply? And so we did a lot of work around what we call student learning objectives. And that means that we're trying to look at, how does every teacher know? How do we know in every class that students are making progress? And we talk about what teachers and others are afraid of or fearful of in terms of a new evaluation system. The idea of incorporating the student learning piece is one of those factors that people are concerned about, but not because they're afraid of demonstrating that their work with students leads students to make progress. That's not the problem at all. It's the problem of relying on that one test. It's the problem of whether or not that one test is appropriate to show growth. So I think the model that we've put together recognizes that where appropriate, we need some information from statewide assessment. It gives us a good outside objective measure. But we're also working hard and working with the Department of Education to look at what are the other ways that we can measure student growth. And so we are looking, I think in the easiest way to explain it is things like pre-tests and post-tests. It's a little more complicated than that, but I think that's one easy way to explain it. How do we look at where students are at the beginning of the year? How do we look at the goals and objectives of the particular subject area? How do we collect evidence throughout the year that students are making progress? And how do we determine whether or not that progress is enough to show that students have done well and have met the targets in a particular grade? The Department of Education is working on the way in which all of that will hang together, and we're going to incorporate that formula into our model. So we feel confident that we're getting the best of both worlds. We're going to use, and we've had input in the design of the student learning piece, but we've also focused heavily on those other pieces that really look at the everyday practice, professional growth, professional responsibilities, the various aspects that make up a real good evaluation.
When we talk about this evaluation, excuse me, what I'm hearing is it's not just the administrator coming in the room to do the evaluation anymore, that there are a whole variety of aspects of this evaluation. What interests me most in this conversation is that there must be, for all intents and purposes, according to what you're telling me, some kind of system of training administrators and teachers on how to do this. I mean, the comment a few minutes ago was that traditionally administrators would come into the classroom, do a checkoff list, and oftentimes say that they weren't prepared or trained in how to do the evaluation. An in-depth evaluation like this is going to require that not just administrators, but teachers as peer evaluators play a vital role. How do you do that training? What have you done to create this opportunity? And how have teachers responded to taking time out to learn how to be evaluated, learn what evaluation is, and to be a part of the process, possibly as a peer evaluator, let alone the administrators?
Well, one of the things that needs to be stated up front is there's a mischaracterization out there that teachers' unions support ineffective teachers, and that's never been the case. We've provided teachers with due process, but teachers or teacher union leaders do not want ineffective teachers in front of students. But going back to what I said earlier, the process has never been consistent or valid or reliable, and that's one of the backbones to this new process is that the training, there is training that provides everyone that's looking at a student that's quantifiable and verifiable, so that if a teacher in Cranston is looking at an evaluator in Cranston is looking at a performance and an evaluator in Woonsocket, they're looking for the same set of issues and concerns, so that there's consistency across the board, so that there's fidelity within that evaluation system, and we found that very important. That was one of the key constructs of this evaluation system. Also, the training has been a tremendous undertaking to provide the appropriate training, and it's still going to be a huge concern going forward, because you have to have that level of training so that the evaluation system is implemented appropriately. And one of we've had tremendous training sessions throughout this summer. Colleen can give you the details on the specific numbers, but it's been important for both the administrators that are going to be implementing this training and the other support personnel like program supervisors and department chairs that will be providing input into this, as well as the people that are being evaluated, so that everyone's on the same page and there's that level of consistency, because without that, the results would be invalid.
So in reality, you could actually have a teacher from Woonsocket as an evaluator of a teacher in Providence,
well, right.
In terms of they have the same skill set. My question is, who designed the kind of training to guarantee the consistency that you talked about?
Well, one of the things that I'd tell you is that I think the consistency piece is really critical, and we hope that evaluators, be they administrator evaluators, and in most cases we're talking about principals and other supervisors who do evaluation. We are training some expert peers to be able to help with the evidence collection piece. At the end of the day, the responsibility for making a determination around effectiveness, we're hoping it'll be collective, but at the end of the day it really rests on the shoulders of the appropriate administrator or supervisor. But I think you are right that whether you go from Woonsocket to West Warwick, we hope that our administrators and our teachers will all have the same level of understanding of the system, and that yes, we could, switch people off and they would both have the same kind of understanding, and we would feel confident, and that's the point I think Frank was making, that whether you or Frank or I were evaluating an individual, if we had been through this training, we could trust that the determination of effectiveness would be consistent among us, because that's really been at the heart of the training. And when you say who designed it, we're pretty lucky. We had an idea a couple of years ago, I think you saw that in the video, that we wanted to take the lead on helping to design really effective teacher evaluation systems. They were really not existent in many of our districts, and if any of our districts. But we knew we needed some help to do that. And so we put a proposal into the AFT, and we received a grant from them, an innovation grant that you heard about in the video. And then subsequently we applied for another grant from the United States Department of Education, and we received a significant grant to support our work in conjunction with the AFT and our partners in New York. That enabled us to identify and to work with some national experts on evaluation. And they helped us to design not only the system, but the training that we piloted in February with mostly administrators and some teacher union leaders, and that we've now just used this summer to train about 170 administrators from across the 6 districts, and a second week of training for district level teams to do the implementation planning. The real, I think, difference, or the most important part of this training is that it is research-based, it is standards-based, and that it takes people through a really in-depth training where they understand the standards, they understand what it means to collect really objective evidence of effectiveness, and they had opportunities to apply those processes to videotaped examples of teacher practice. And so if you were to sit in on the training, you would have watched people learn about the system, you do some work to really understand the expectations. There are some similarities and some differences to the way they've conducted evaluations before, but then they went through a process throughout the week where they first worked in partners and then worked alone to apply those standards to videotaped examples of practice. And what we get from that is that every night those folks uploaded their evaluation, their evidence collection, and their ratings to the national experts, who essentially did a mathematical computation and an evaluation of the evaluation to give us evidence about how close our evaluators were in their judgment and how close they were to what we know was the actual, what we call a true score, the people who had already evaluated and developed the particular videotapes of practice. So at the end of the day, we developed a good confidence level, not only in the evaluators, because they had had lots of experience and opportunities to learn about the system, but as superintendents, as union leaders, as teachers, people can have confidence that your judgment of my practice is based on a high level of training, an assertion that your judgments are in line with what we know to be the actual judgments of practice, and that we can feel confidence that the rating that's given at the end of the day is an objective one that's reliable and valid.
So in reality, what I'm hearing is that regardless of who does the evaluation, it's based upon rigor and criteria and standards, and that the personality or any other part of it is kind of taken from the mix. It's based upon what you see in evidence of performance.
One of the things that we heard mostly from the piloting of the system, we piloted the system in 11 schools across the districts in February, actually between February and May, and I looked at a lot of the results. In fact, we have a national, well-recognized research group, the American Institutes for Research, doing some studying of the work that we're doing. And they've collected, through surveys and other pieces of information, kind of the feedback from the people who participated in the pilot. And the most consistent thing we heard was that people thought that this was the most objective form of evaluation they'd ever been through, and that the conversations they had between the evaluator and the evaluatee were really professional in nature, that they weren't subjective, that they weren't dependent upon, did you wear that tie the first day, or something that you mentioned earlier. So I think you're right, that the training was very critical. We feel that we still have more support to do as we go forward. In addition to training the evaluators, where we've developed 4 informational modules so that teachers and others in the systems can learn about, you know, what is the evaluation system? How is it similar to and different from what's been in place before? What are those standards? What are the practices? What can you expect when you go through this new process? And I think, you know, when we think about what we've been doing, that to me, we went through a week of that training with district teams about a week ago, and I walked away from that feeling confident as I looked at the plans they put in place to begin with their orientations, the professional development days they have prior to the beginning of school year, that we're taking the time to give people the information they need to not just do this, not just to implement the system, but to do it right.
I think, just to follow up on that, I think one of the primary purpose of an evaluation system should be to help professionals become better at their craft, and that's really the focus of this. And unless you have this kind of specific data about the models that you're evaluating, then you really can't provide that kind of valid and useful feedback to the teachers. And from what I've heard from a number of people that have been involved in this process, and what I've witnessed, is this is really opening up people's eyes for the first time as the link between teacher evaluation and classroom practice, and what it takes and what you need to become better professionals at your craft. And that's really the purpose of this whole exercise.
Well, I even noticed at the video that we showed in the very beginning, there were administrators and teachers who reflected that same comment. Administrators who said, I was a little bit afraid, a little bit skeptical. Would teachers buy in? Would we be able to do it? It's pretty intensive. The standards are pretty high. And the response after was that they felt confident, and teachers said they actually wanted the feedback, which was really kind of a very positive comment in terms of the evaluation system that the innovation model that the Federation of Teachers has designed. So let me ask you, Frank, you made reference to 3 models, the innovation model, a model in Coventry, and a state model. Tell me about the other models. Are they different? Are they based upon the same set of standards? Are they similar?
They're very similar in terms of their construction. I think the distinct advantage that we have with the innovation model and the Coventry model as well are that both of those models were developed collaboratively between the major stakeholders, the teachers, unions, and the administration and the districts that were involved in those. And because of there's a natural buy-in, it's a bottom-up rather than a top-down system, and because there's that level of enthusiasm about developing this together, it's going to be easier to implement those within the districts, because this is a huge shift from what's going on historically, and without that level of support from both the teachers union and the administration, I don't think you'll get the same level of buy-in anywhere else. So I'm confident that in those districts, they will roll this out successfully within the next several weeks. And throughout this year, we'll get feedback information, and we'll continuously update what we're doing. And it's a process, it's a lengthy process. And I think we're compared to everyone else within the state, those districts are in a better starting point, at a better starting point than anyone else.
Now, you had said you had 6 districts to begin. And now that your model has been approved, have other districts contacted the Federation of Teachers saying, we want to take a look at your model, we're interested in using your model? The video would lead me to believe that teachers are very positive about it. It's a non-threatening professional model in how to improve instruction. I'm sure that if teachers saw that, many of them would say, let me take a look at that, because it would appear to be a model that was designed for and with teachers, with input from administrators and organized labor, so that we have this collaborative approach. Have other unions contact, sorry, not unions, have other districts contacted you and asked to be a part of that model?
Yeah, we've actually gotten inquiries from a number of districts, and we've had a couple of districts express interest in adopting the model, non-innovation districts. And, you know, the approval from the Department of Education was really important to us. It's important because it does, I think, at some point open up the doors for others to benefit from the work that we've done and to try this model and see if it fits their needs. I think that the models are, you asked about the differences, they're comparable in terms of, remember, we're all guided by the Rhode Island Educator Evaluation System standards, and we're all guided by the current thinking on what high-quality teacher and educator evaluation systems should look like. So I think there's a lot of similarity, probably more similarity than differences when you take a look at the three models across. I think that there's no getting around the fact that this is rigorous and this is comprehensive. And you're not going to see people picking up the phone and calling us because they think that this is an easier model. That's not the case at all, and I think it's very important for people to know that. Because it's got the union label on it doesn't mean that we've taken a shortcut or we have something that is less rigorous. In fact, it is a pretty heavy lift, quite frankly, all around. But I do think what Frank talked about, our absolute belief that this is about educator growth, our collaborative imperative that if somebody's interested in adopting this model, they have to assure us that the administration and the union comes into the door together. And so right away that, you know, gives you that at least signal that says we're going to try to work on this together. And we think that that is a leg up, if you will. The Department of Education, we've been working with the Department of Education over the last year in trying to see whether or not we can align the work that we're doing and conceive of a single system, if you will, with the various choices being pathways. We're going to continue that conversation in the fall. We were both pretty focused on training this summer. But I do think there's interest out there in what we're doing. I just met with a different district yesterday to answer some questions, and there was an administrator there who had heard from his administrator colleagues from a different district, one of our districts, who said how professional the training was, how comprehensive the training was, and that they were waiting to see whether or not they were certified, because it obviously was meaningful enough to them that they wanted to be able to say that they had successfully completed the training. That made me feel real good, and it sent a message to this other district that what we were doing is significant. And so it's that kind of interest that we're getting, and I think as we move forward over the next number of months, we'll be having conversations with the department about how districts go about indicating their interest in adopting the model. Now, when do districts have to give notice that they are adopting a particular model? Well, that I really don't know, Bob. I think that there were timelines in place last year for districts to let the Department of Education know whether or not they were working on a model, like the districts that were working on the innovation model were, as opposed to adopting the Rhode Island model. And Coventry did that, and of course the 6 districts that we're working with. This is new territory now that we've been approved, and that's something in terms of timelines that we're going to have to talk about with the department. My understanding is that there are a couple of districts who are interested enough to send the Department of Education a letter saying that they would like to explore adopting our model. All of the districts in Rhode Island are involved in this thing called gradual implementation. We agreed as we were going through the approval process with the Department of Education that we would adopt their form of gradual implementation. It means that every teacher, every building principal next year must set 1 professional practice goal, 2 student learning goals, have 1 formal and 2 informal observations of practice. So we're all going to be doing that next year, and the innovation districts will be using our set of rubrics and our processes. I would guess that throughout this year, if the biggest stumbling block would be for a district to have to come in and get trained in the processes that we're using to collect that evidence through the formal and the informal observations. But we think that if districts did that in the next couple of months, we'd be able to help them get the training done so that they could go through the gradual implementation year. How much training is there that they need to commit to at this point? Or even you can bring in a longer stretch of what is required in terms of training? How much time does it take? And what kind of a commitment, both time and financially, does that have on the district? Well, we've done a couple of things. The actual administrator or evaluator training is at a minimum 5 full days of training. And so we've just completed a week of that training. When we did the pilot, we found that in addition to the 5 days of training, We needed about an additional 4 days to focus on some of the things that are critical to the evidence collection process, the record keeping, the conferencing back and forth between evaluator and evaluatee, and the final decision-making process. Those were the real big issues. So you're really talking about a 7 to 8 days of full-day training. But I think the other important thing is that this is not something that you do once and then forget about. So we know that there are going to be additional commitments to refresher training, if you will. We had some grant money to help support the training that we conducted over the summer. And that grant money is really focused on those 6 districts, and we've been pretty open about that with the districts who've contacted us. But we also know that there's Race to the Top money that is dedicated to educator evaluation, and we've had some good discussions with the department about how districts, whether they are participating in the Department of Education training, and in fact our districts are going to take advantage of their student learning training, and that's being paid for by Race to the Top, and how a district who is in a different approved model rather than the Rhode Island model might access some of those funds to help with the training. These are tough times in terms of financial obligations for all districts, and so we know that we're looking to both build internal capacity. What are the kinds of things that districts already have on the books in terms of professional development days, administrator training or meeting time that could be used, and how might we supplement that with Race to the Top or other grant dollars to get the job done. But that's a big consideration, time and money.
I take a look at even this summer. How many teachers were involved in training for you this summer?
A couple hundred.
Yes. We had 170 involved in the week of evaluation training, educator evaluator training, and we're actually going to host 2 additional weeks in the fall. So we expect probably another 100 evaluators to go through that training. And then we had a week of training for teams of districts, teams from the districts, and I think we had about 60 people involved in that. So we trained 50 evaluators in the pilot phase. We did another 170 this summer, and we expect to do at least another 100 in the fall. And in addition to that, we're conducting professional development outreach in all of the districts right now for all of the teachers.
I can tell you that I spoke to the president of the Cranston Teachers Alliance, and they're doing their initial rollout next week. It's voluntary because they're not back at school yet, and it's a 3-hour session, and they have 840 teachers as of yesterday that have signed up to be involved in this, which is a huge percent of teachers that are interested enough to want to come in and see this prior to the official beginning of the school year. So it's a really... and
it's impressive. You say it was voluntary.
Voluntary.
Mm-hmm. And there were 150 teachers in Pawtucket yesterday who went through a full-day training, and it's the same thing. I think,
and
again,
this is an awareness training on what is the evaluation system and how does it work.
Yep, absolutely.
What happens in a district if we were to look 3 years out and there has been a large investment in training administrators and getting them ready to do an effective job in evaluation? One of the things that I know happens in districts is that there's a degree of portability for administrators to go from district to district or school to school. What happens when you've trained the administrators in a particular school in one of your districts, and all of a sudden the next year the principal and 2 assistant principals are gone?
Well, we believe that it's very important to build internal capacity. And one of the things that we've been saying all along is that should be done rather than using external people that are just hired to do evaluations but aren't embedded within the district, because we wouldn't have the sustainability by not having people that are trained, that are employees within the district to continue on, just to continue training. I mean, there's a turnover of teachers and administrators every year within every district, and if you don't have that capacity internally, with the diminishing funds, you wouldn't have the money to continue to provide that level of training. And getting back to your earlier question, it's hugely expensive to implement this training, and without grants we wouldn't have been able to do that, and it's a mandate from the state that you have to have a new evaluation system. So everyone is going to be struggling to do the same thing, to provide this level of training, and it's going to stretch budgets, and if you don't have that capacity and capability internally to sustain that with people that you've trained that are employees. And let's face it, some people move on to higher jobs. They go from being a principal to an assistant superintendent somewhere. That's natural, and you expect that's going to happen. And within this model, at least there'd be consistency, because you'd be familiar with it if you went to a district that had that was involved in the same model. But it makes sense to build internal capacity rather than rely on people just to do evaluations that are, say, retired teachers or people from out of state to do that. We don't believe that that's the best way to go, and that's not a good utilization of monies.
I think one of the benefits to thinking about this as a system, there are enough comparable pieces now, and as we talk and work more closely with the Department of Education, I think that we can build partnerships with higher education to make sure that the basic elements of this kind of thing are embedded in administrator training and teacher preparation training, so that we get a little bit, we've got to move in that direction. I think Frank's point about building some internal capacity to do training is critical. We have had the luxury of using some grant dollars to free up a person or a portion of a person's time in each of the 6 districts for the past year. We're now getting to the point where we want to make sure that we can train some people internally, those, the teams that I told you came to training last week, that over time, if a new administrator comes in, they'll be able to pick up some of the training, at least at the awareness level. And then while we've been using some of those national experts I told you about to conduct the training, one of the things I'm proud about is that over the week that we ran training this summer, the evaluator training, we had 7 Rhode Island individuals. I think we had 4 teachers and 3 principals who participated as co-facilitators, and they're now being, they're in the process, if you will, of being trained to be trainers of evaluators. So we're hoping to be able to bring the capacity to train and to retrain and to refresh evaluators in terms of their training over the years internally, and that's going to be much more cost effective than the way we've had to do it this year. So this was the big push to get people ready for September, but we are already thinking about and working with our district partners to think about how we might pull that training in so that it will be more cost effective and that it will be sustainable over time in the district, so they can introduce new people to the training and they can feel assured that there'll be the consistency not just across the districts but over time.
Colleen raised another good point in that one of the things we need to do, and this is so very new that we're coming across a number of these things almost daily, but one of the things we have to do is reach out to the colleges, both the administrative teacher preparation programs and the teacher preparation programs at the colleges, so that they're familiar with the work that's being done out there, so that when these folks come into the profession locally, that they'd have some experience in that, and it wouldn't be a new experience for them.
We were very lucky that both the Dean of the School of Education and at Rhode Island College and the University of Rhode Island participated on our design team. So we have a foot in the door there. We just know we have to push forward and do a little bit more work in that area. So
it really is about building capacity. When we take a look at, from a business perspective, of building a business plan, it appears evident to me that you've designed a system, you've brought in the resources, and you've built in you're now currently building in sustainability by bringing in the higher ed partners. Money is always a fascinating topic.
Or lack of it.
Or lack thereof.
So let me ask you, it appears to be a huge financial undertaking. And with all of the restraints on funds, on education in this state and elsewhere, how much money did you bring in? I mean, that was outside dollars that you brought into the state to help support a teacher evaluation system that would improve instruction and student performance. If you don't mind me asking, how much money were you able to get?
The first grant that we had from the AFT was for $200,000, and that was really to support the release of people to do the design work and to bring in some of the experts to do that work. We got a second grant of $170,000. I think actually it was about $150,000 to continue that work and to begin the training. It was a drop in the bucket for what was needed for training. The grant that we got from the U.S. Department of Education was for $6 million. It actually was for $5 million, and we, between the AFT and some other contributions, including a $200,000 contribution from the Rhode Island Foundation because they recognized the importance of this work, we were able to get that $5 million up to $6 million, which was required by the Department of Ed. You had to have a 20% match. But that $6 million is split between the New York State United Teachers and the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers, and some work that we engaged national experts in, like the American Institutes of Research. But I would say that we've brought, my goodness, we've probably brought in a couple of $1 million at a minimum. That's a real low estimate, at least $3 million to this effort over a 4-year period, not all expended in the 1 year. With the U.S. Department of Education grant funding takes us out to, it's a 4-year period, but we front-loaded a lot of the money for training in this year and next year.
And we're expecting that some of the districts that are involved in this will be able to access some of the Race to the Top funds to supplement the work that they're doing here.
Which will be necessary now.
Well, and my understanding was that within the Race for the Top funding, there was an allocation in there for teacher evaluation.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I really have to commend you. I mean, I take a look at this and think you've built an entire system from the bottom up. We've taken a system that for years and years people have complained about. Teachers have complained about it. I mean, having been a classroom teacher, I've experienced an administrator coming in and doing the checkoff list, feeling uncomfortable, knowing that he or she needed to do it. And I think this is a system that will improve instruction. It will improve student performance. And I think you deserve a lot of credit for doing it. I look forward to having a conversation with you in the coming months, and possibly even bringing in some administrators and teachers and creating a panel so we can have a discussion about what it looks like a year after the fact, because I know in the video at the very beginning of the program, many of those people in the video were people who have been trained over the last year. If I'm not mistaken, they spent time in New York, in Buffalo.
In Albany.
In Albany, doing some work and getting trained and certified. So, I mean, you really have built capacity. Frank, as a new president, you must be proud.
I'm very proud. I couldn't be more proud of the work that the RIFT is doing, and I think it's important for us as professionals to take charge of those components of our professional life and show that, you know, we are part of the solution. You know, under Colleen's leadership with this project, the results so far have been exceptional, and we would look forward to coming back with some of our stakeholders, like the principals and superintendents who are involved in this, and some of the teachers that are being evaluated, and have that discussion with you, because I don't think that our message gets out there enough, and that would be certainly a good vehicle to do that.
Yeah, I look forward to talking with you and Colleen as we come to the end of the program. I also want to make reference to the fact that you're a member of the Board of Regents for Elementary and Secondary Education, appointed by a governor or so back. And there must be, for you, a sense of accomplishment in being able to take a look at what the department was looking for and blending that into a model that was co-developed by administrators and teachers and facilitated by the Federation of Teachers.
Oh, I am. I often say, and I juggle the hats sometimes between the work we do at the Federation of Teachers and my appointment to the board. But I think at the end of the day, I've said oftentimes that, you know, it takes the involvement of many, many partners to get the job done that is needed in Rhode Island in terms of ensuring that we have the highest quality education system for our students. And it feels really good. I think if I look at this from a Regent's point of view, I am very proud of the fact that we adopted a set of standards that are really going to change what teacher evaluation and educator evaluation looks like in this state. And that I'm glad to see, as a regent, that there are multiple partners involved in designing and implementing the system, because that's what it'll take. And so then if I switch hats and say, as a person who's been involved in the development, from the union's point of view, I echo what Frank said. I am enormously proud of the work that our people have done, enormously proud that the union is stepping out in front and kind of belying some of the myths about being obstacles to this kind of reform. And it has taken multiple partners. We could not have done this alone. We can't do it alone. We're not finished. We're really at the beginning part of this journey. And we have created some relationships with administrators at the district level, at the building level, and engaged our union leaders both at the local level and the building level in ways that I think are going to be beneficial for all of our members, and most importantly for the children that we serve.
Well, you know, as a resident of Rhode Island, and as a parent, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your commitment of time and energy and bringing in finances to help improve not just the level of instruction and student performance, but I believe economic development in the state. Because I think that the key resource to our future is the students that we work with each and every day. And what I see is a vast majority of students in Rhode Island leaving and going somewhere else. And I think what happens is you've contributed to making students more ready in many ways for where we're going. I think that you have truly contributed to a better education system. So I want to thank you on my behalf, and I'm sure of most of the residents of Rhode Island. I look forward to having a future discussion. Maybe the two of you can begin to pick some people who can have a great discussion on teacher evaluation.
We'll do that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Bob.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us for this evening's edition of Labor Vision. We appreciate your input and encourage your comments. Labor Vision can be seen 3 times each week here on Channel 14. Join us on Tuesdays at 7 p.m., Thursdays at 8 p.m., and Saturdays at 5 p.m. The Workplace Adult Literacy Program at the Institute for Labor Studies and Research was designed to provide ESL and GED programs to incumbent workers at their worksite. Over the past 25 years, strong partnerships among employers, employees, and the unions that represent them have resulted in the Institute becoming the largest provider of worksite adult literacy classes in the state. Through funding from the Rhode Island Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and the Governor's Workforce Board, we have been able to provide worksite literacy programs to more than 30 employers in the state at no cost to the employer. If you're interested in joining in the program, contact the Institute for Labor Studies and Research.
The Institute for Labor Studies and Research is dedicated to supporting working Rhode Islanders, organized labor, and employers. Helping you to discover the best career or getting your career back on track is what our career transition resources are all about. We have researched the best career transition resources available today and provide them all in one place so you can manage your career path until you choose retirement. We encourage you to take advantage of these many resources so you can get the best jobs that are a good match for your talents. In my case, I started with the Institute 30 years ago, started my college career over again, and moved from a union steam fitter to now a union school teacher. I still carry both books, but it was the Institute of Labor Studies that got me going again. Please, for more information, for a good job match profiling, contact the Institute for Labor Studies and Research.
Leadership for a Future is the Institute's training program that provides the opportunity for emerging and established leaders from community groups, labor unions, and the religious community to participate in a weekend retreat and a host of training sessions dealing with Rhode Island's history, culture, economics, and politics. I am a graduate of the class of 2011, and I am proud to join the ranks of more than 200 graduates before me. For more information on Leadership for a Future, please contact the Institute for Labor Studies and Research.
College courses at the Institute can be delivered by instructors face-to-face or taken online through our partnership with the National Labor College and Penn Foster College. You can earn your bachelor's or associate's degrees in such areas as construction management, business, or many others while you work. You can even get credit for your work experience and completed training courses. For more information, contact the Institute for Labor Studies and Research.
For you to compete in today's economic environment, it's critical to commit to lifelong learning and the potential of online education. At the Institute for Labor Studies and Research, we make it easy. It's simple. Whether you need only one course or want to complete a certificate or associate or a bachelor's degree, we have everything you need at the click of a mouse. Our partnerships with the National Labor College and Penn Foster College has made it easy and convenient for you to take courses on your schedule. For more information, contact the Institute for Labor Studies and Research.